Starting to reassemble the valve train here. Cleaned everything up, inspected everything on the heads here, and they're looking pretty good. We're just lapping the valves in on them. Other than that, not doing a whole lot to them. Got a set of Hughes valve springs with new retainers and keepers. And there's a new set of rockers going on here. But we're not going too crazy on the build on these. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of problems over the last few weeks getting parts in. And part of that has come down to just the availability right now is terrible. I couldn't get a camshaft. I had several orders canceled that I had placed. And rather unfortunately, we had to go back with a stock replacement camshaft for a 360. 2 cams are unavailable right now. I talked to Comp and looked at pretty much everything in their catalog, and none of their stuff is available right now. So with the stock cam, I'm not going to worry about going and doing anything crazy with these heads. We're not really going to see any big improvements there. I do have the valve springs here so that later when cams become available, the heads can support it if I do decide to swap it. But for right now, I think the soonest I could get a cam that wasn't a stock replacement for a 5.9 was April, I believe is what I was told by Comp. I even looked at sending a cam to Crane to have one reground, and just the backlog is crazy on them right now. So we're just gonna get this thing reassembled and give it one more bath, and then set it off to the side, and we'll move on to the next one. But not really much to show here. I'm just cleaning up the stock valves, relapping them a little bit. New valve seals in it, which these are the valve seals that came out of it. They are just trashed. But a little bit of progress. I'm happy. Parts are finally here. I've been waiting forever on main bearings, and those got here this morning. And then I think 2 days ago is when my valve retainers and keepers got here, which is another thing I've been waiting on. Getting these new valve springs installed as we go. So valve springs, retainers, and keepers are all from Hughes. It's a single valve spring with a damper. And it's good to a cam up to like 600 lift. So more than fine for what we're doing, but kind of nice to have the option there, because like I said, I did want to do more cam, and I'm hoping in the future, if availability comes back up and I've got the time, we'll tear it back apart again and we'll throw in something that's a little spicier. Alright, so we're getting these press fit wrist pins in, and what you do to do that is you get the rod nice and hot, push the wrist pin through, let it center. That rod is going to cool off right now, and when it does, it will become permanently attached to that, there we go, wrist pin. Now it's going to sit there and hold for a sec because everything is expanding, but just a sec here. When it cools off, that's it, we're good to go. So just let it cool down there. All we're going to do is get these rods heated up just a little bit on the big end so they'll expand. And we're going to go take them over to the press and just press the pins out. We don't want to press them back in because we're worried about obviously damaging pistons, but these pistons are junk. So all we're going to do is just get the big end or the small end of the rod heated up just a touch with some MAP gas here. And we'll go press these out. Alright, and our last one. Wrist pin is in, centered. Now just wait for it to cool. All 8 pistons are mounted back on their rods. Press fit rods are kind of annoying, especially if you're used to conventional styles where you have like a spiral lock or a snap ring or something on the wrist pins. This way takes more work. To be, you know, just a little bit cheaper. I'd rather have a different setup, but I wasn't going to get different rods and pistons for this build for what we're trying to do. But Now that the dangerous and fire part of the job is done for the night, I think it's about time to start drinking, and I'm going to get the rings file fit tonight and hopefully get all the rings on these pistons. Then probably tomorrow, I think we're going to do short block assembly. Everything should finally be here that we can get that done. And possibly get those heads on, but I got to give those heads a final cleaning before we go to try to put those on here. Well, there we go. Rods and pistons are assembled. Our rings have been file fit and installed. And I'm definitely done working on this thing for the day. This will be a tomorrow problem when we start putting the short block together on it, but they're at least assembled and ready. I'm just going to give them a quick rinse down before we put them together. But they should be good. Well, I think we're going to start reassembly of the short block today. Getting ready to get all the main bearings popped out of here. We'll get that rear main seal out, get everything cleaned up real quick with some brake clean and a rag. And I think we'll get the crank set down in there today. Rods and pistons are in, but unfortunately we got to stop there because we had a bit of an issue installing the back cam bearing. So tomorrow I'm going to have to find another set of cam bearings, and either hopefully we can get them local, but if not, I'll have to order them and they'll be here in a day or two. But you know, I'm not Caterpillar, so I'm not going to let a bearing that I don't like go in this engine. So we'll get a new set, just the rear one, so really easy to install. As soon as we get that, it'll go back together pretty quick at this point. Timing set can go on after the cam goes in. We'll get the heads dropped on, and that's about it, because timing cover is coming off of the engine that's in the truck. Intake manifold isn't here. That's up with Dalen. He's going to bring that down when he comes to help me swap it. And I guess I can get the oil pump and stuff on, but I'm waiting for a new oil pump drive to get here too. But we'll hop back on it in a day or two here and just keep going on assembly. Got the first cylinder head sat down on there. We got the stuff to get the cam in. The cam is back in, but I haven't put the timing set on or any of that yet. Got it sealed up. I'm getting ready to get the other head and we'll get it sat on there too. Well, I think that looks a little bit better. We've got our first coat on there and it's drying right now. I'm gonna stay out here with it for a little while and probably hit it with another coat after this. But that's our first full coat over the engine. I dusted it, let that set up real quick, and then shot this coat. But I think that's gonna be good enough for what I'm trying to do with it. By the time this engine sits in the truck and you know it's got the full front accessory drive on it, the header's on, we get the intake and valve covers on and all that, you're not gonna be able to see much of this engine. So, you know, I'm not going for anything crazy as far as the finish of the paint job. I just wanted something to be a little nice and be a little different, you know. I took the time to build the engine. Might as well do something to make it look a little different. Just finishing getting these Harlan Sharp rockers on here. We're not going to get them fully set up right now. I'm just getting them snugged down and in place, but we'll come back in a little bit and get them completely set. I just got to look at the instructions and see what they want to see. But man, those are some really good looking rockers. I just wish they came in a color other than orange. Doesn't go so good with the Alpine. Well, we're getting close to getting finished up on getting parts back on this engine here. Oil pan is drying right now. I had to shoot some fresh paint on it real quick because we had some paint come off when I cleaned it. Valve covers I'm going to put on after we kind of do a last flush with some oil through this and drain the pan out once we get the pan on. My intake manifold is somewhere between here and Kentucky right now. And then I need a timing cover. But the timing cover is on this engine. So coolant's draining on this. We're getting ready to start getting this thing lifted up here. And just like we did a few weeks ago, this is coming out. And that's going back in, but obviously with a lot better parts than it came out with. If you guys don't follow on Patreon, probably didn't know that I blew this motor up too. It was good for a few weeks, and then I lost all oil pressure. So drove over to the shop this morning, got it in here. If you let off the throttle, the truck usually just locks up and stalls, but it'll usually crank back over and restart. But we're not gonna have to worry about that anymore. It's in the shop, so as soon as Dalen gets here, I think he's gonna hop on getting a bunch of stuff disconnected on this while I continue to assemble this engine. Got the cooling pack out of the front of the truck here. Went ahead and got the fan off. Dalen is underneath right now, back in his normally assigned position of bell housing bolts and stuff, while watching GLTC run at COTA. You want to keep your friend happy when you give him the bad job? Let him watch racing. But oh, you can leave that running. It's fine. It's probably not copyrighted. I don't think.
It probably is, actually.
It'll be fine. Anyway, we're working on this. I think the plan is, because we got a really late start today. No one's fault. We didn't intend on starting early. I still had work to do on the engine. But I think we're going to get the engine out tonight is what we're thinking we're going to end up. And we got a couple of things we're going to try this time that we didn't do last time that we think is going to make this project a lot easier. Well, this is a familiar sight. Got the engine mostly stripped down on the front here. I'm getting ready to start stripping the intake and just getting the intake out as a unit so we have some room. We just got the converter bolts out of it. And I think Dalen's hopping to bell housing and collectors right now. And we're getting really close to having this engine out of this truck. There's not a whole lot left holding it in here. Been on it for what, hour and a half?
Yeah.
So it moves pretty quickly. Are we going to see a bunch of crap? Are there chunks? Huh. I don't see near as much metal as oh, nope, there it is. There's definitely metal in there.
Oh, where's all? I know the pan wasn't clean, but I think I'm seeing glitter in the pan too.
Well, it had no oil pressure, and I drove it for some distance like that, so I can see a straight stream of metal right there coming down the backside of it. You know, I have my filter cutter out. We're gonna have to autopsy that filter here in a little while. How the hell is there already a wasp nest? This engine hasn't even been in here that long.
It's winter.
It's bullshit. Don't look near as bad as I thought for something that lost oil pressure. I figured that'd be quite a bit worse than that. Well, we're down to one collector bolt and then just bell housing bolts, and this thing's out of here. But I think we decided with how late it's getting in the day, we're gonna pick it out of here tomorrow because we'll have it out and then right back in with the new one. As far as everything goes, the one that's going in it, it's pretty much assembled enough to go straight in there. I've got to torque the flex plate real quick when we get it off the stand. These engine mounts are coming off, and we're gonna use the engine mounts that are in chassis right now. But other than that, we can sit it in just like this, and then I can put the timing cover and everything else together once this is in the truck. Well, we got the front cover swapped over and the balancer in it. That's probably about as dressed as it's going to be when it goes in, with the exception that I might try the headers on because we are taking the engine out in a different way this time. The engine's set and ready to pull right now. Dalen is just working on getting the motor mounts loose. But this time, instead of pulling the motor mounts up out of the channels, we're going to leave them in their channels. Just loosen them and hopefully let them swing down into the frame. We're thinking that's going to give us a lot better chance at pulling this motor straight instead of having to go up so much first. Which, if we don't have to go up, I think that fixes our problem of why it was so hard to get in with the headers.
Yeah, because last time we had this primary tube getting into the booster.
You know, if I had to pick, I'd pick the primary tube over my booster.
Yeah.
The brakes suck anyway. But hopefully this way makes it easier, because it is a pain in the ass to put those headers on in chassis. I mean, it's doable. It just really sucks. It's free. This way worked a lot better. We are definitely going to put this engine back in with the headers because it'll save us a lot of time to put the headers in on the stand. But that wasn't bad at all. That was the easiest I've gotten one out in a long time. Turns out we're just an idiot. We should take the engine mounts off from the start, from the block.
I don't have, it's going to be fun to put it back in, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun to try to get it into the bell housing last time and the frame rail. I think we're winning this time. But we're going to get this thing drugged the rest of the way out, and I think really the headers and the valve covers the only thing I need to rob off this motor, and then we can get right back to finishing up the other one. Got both the engines out, so now I just got to get the headers swapped over to this one. And then we can get it right back in chassis. Oh, wait, I also got to move the crank sensor. Don't let me forget to put the crank sensor on the motor this time before it goes in chassis, because it is really hard to put it in when the engine's in. I think it's time. We're going to put valve covers on, but man, I really don't want to. It's a shame to cover up all those nice rockers, but I want these on before we swing it in the truck. I don't want to risk stuff getting down in there. Well, it's that time. We're going to get this motor shoved in the truck. Hopefully it doesn't fight us too bad. Damn, if that doesn't just look good. Engine's in. Dalen's getting ready to hop under. We're going to put the converter bolts in. Bell housing bolts are all in it. Tight. Motor mounts are on. We did get it put in with the headers. Now, it was a mild pain doing it this way. I don't know if it was a win versus the other way and putting headers on in chassis. But we got it. But can we take a second to see how just slightly above average this engine looks now in Detroit Alpine green with the black valve covers and oil pan. And we got our 1007 CFM used throttle body sitting on top of this thing. I'm excited. This should be fun. We're not going to do anything hard on it for quite a while. We're going to give this engine a very thorough break-in before we get to beating on it. But I'm pretty happy.
We do our best not to repeat the 300-mile rod knock situation from last winter.
Well, it made it over 500 because I changed the oil at 500, but it was shortly after when we blew the last one up. So we're going to try to beat that this time.
Yeah.
We're getting pretty close here. The engine's completely wired and hooked up. I just put the new fan clutch on. Plug wires are in, but I need to get them hooked up out of the way. Yeah, it's getting there. It's just getting late. We've already lost all sunlight, but depending on how much some other things want to fight us, so hopefully it's not going to be too long before we can try to start this thing. Also, I'd love to point out that, as I figured, once this motor's dressed, you really can't tell what color I painted the block. Alright, well, the cooling pack is sitting in the truck, but I've been walking around the shop for a few minutes right now trying to figure out where the hell I put all the bolts for the cooling pack. It's a really big bag of bolts, too. Like, this is no... It's not like I lost one or two. It's everything to hold the front end together. Alright, we'll check back here in a minute if I can find them. Otherwise, stay tuned for me to lose what's left of my sanity. I'm an idiot. I found them.
I remember you put them there now.
Yeah, I do too. I was like, oh, they won't get lost if I just sit them in the air filter housing. God, I'm stupid. Well, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Let's get the cooling pack in the truck. It's been 15-20 minutes that I've been wandering around the shop just slowly losing my shit trying to find those bolts. Oh god, it's too late for this shit, but I want this thing to run. I want to hear this make noise. Oh, I guess back at it. Made the call. We're gonna go ahead and finish it in the morning. We've noticed that we're starting to get tired to the point where we're getting sloppy and starting to make a mistake or two here and there, and I don't want to risk it. We'll just finish it up tomorrow morning. Just about ready for our first startup here. All we have left is I gotta tighten the header to the collector on this side. And then I think we are ready for our first startup. We're not gonna have an oil pressure reading for the first startup because I damaged the pigtail to the oil pressure sending unit. New one of those should be in here, just a little bit to O'Reilly, but I think we're gonna go ahead and let it do its first startup first. But not too much longer here. You don't see anything?
Yeah, the only fuel connection we changed is on the rail, and that's right.
All right, well stand back. This might fireball out the intake.
You're not gonna try one first?
Alright, well, it's been a stressful little while here as we've been working through some problems and diagnosing stuff, and you know how it goes. There's a lot of new parts that went into this, so there's a lot of things that were not known quantities we had to work out. I ended up putting the old coil back in. We swapped distributors back to the old one that it ran on last. I took the Hughes throttle body off and put the stock one back on because I used all the sensors that came in that Hughes one, and that's been sitting on a shelf at Brandon's for quite a while. But I think we got it. Man, that is a sight that makes me happy. Flatbed is back outside and under its own power. Nothing against the dually, it's just not as fun of a daily. Well, I'm gonna go do some break-in driving on this thing and see how it goes. As you can tell, there's a storm, so hopefully it doesn't leave me stranded. Well, after some time and some test driving, I'm pretty happy. Got good oil pressure, no check engine light. The only thing we got is the airbag light, which is never going to be fixed on this truck. I do hear a tiny bit of exhaust leak. It sounds like out of the left side collector, but this is the first time it's gotten a good heat cycle to it, so I'll have to retorque the headers no matter what once it cools off. But I'm happy. This thing's running really good. So we're gonna drive this thing a few days here. Nothing too far, nothing too crazy. But I still have more parts to put back on the truck because, like I said, I took off our big throttle body, I took off the new coil, a few other things like that. So what we're gonna do is over the next few days here, I'm gonna drive it, put some miles on it, and once I know I've got all the other bugs worked out, we're gonna put those back on and reintroduce those in a way that it's not an unknown variable to me. The reason we took them off during troubleshooting is I wanted to make sure that those weren't the cause of my problems. I was pretty sure the coil wasn't, but I had another known good coil. So I put it back on, problem was there. I was getting some weird throttle issues. Wanted to rule out that throttle body because it had sensors that have been sitting in it for quite a while. But I'm pretty happy with where we're at now. I think we're gonna let it break in a little more. And then once we get some miles on it here, we'll get those parts thrown back on, and then we'll see what it'll really do. I can already tell, though, just by driving it, even with the setup in it right now, the truck's faster. This thing has a lot more power down low, and I'm happy about that. But there's more to come, so I'll probably just throw it in this video. So it's gonna take a little longer to get out to you guys, but I want to put some time on this and make sure that everything's good. Going through and doing one more checkup and clean on this Hughes throttle body. Got all the sensors out, making sure all the passages are completely cleaned out in it. We're gonna go ahead and get it back on the truck today. So I just finished spraying this out. I'm gonna get it all bolted back together. Got a fresh gasket up there, and we're gonna go put this on the truck. Got the throttle body back on there. Went ahead and retorqued my headers. This is the second retorque I've done on them. I'm still hearing a bit of a leak on startup, but I don't think it's actually coming from the headers to block. I think that we are getting that leak on the collectors. So I think that means I'm going to still be in the market for a set of long tubes for this truck. So that is annoying to me that on startup I get a leak, and I'm pretty sure it's this side collector that's doing it. But the headers are tight to the motor. I made sure of that. New throttle body's on. We went ahead and swapped back to our new coil, so we got the old one back off again. I think that's about it. I might end up doing the oil change on it today, the first oil change. The engine's been in here for just over a week, and this is pretty much all I've drove for the last week. I've been letting it break in pretty easy, haven't gotten on it yet. Just, you know, normal around town driving. Haven't towed anything with it yet or anything like that. Just nice, soft, easy miles so far. But I'll probably go ahead and get the first oil change done, if not today, this weekend. And we'll get the permanent oil in there and a new filter. We'll go ahead and cut the filter apart that came off it, make sure that everything's good. But I think we're getting really close to having this thing where I consider it finished. Now, that being said, I did order transmission parts for it, so we are going to do some work on the transmission. Transmission pan is leaking on this, so we're going to go ahead and get a new pan for it. I got a plus 4-quart finned aluminum one. We're also doing that because I want to move my transmission temp sensor. It is currently on the feed line to my cooler. We're going to tap the side of the pan and put it in the pan and get rid of it from the feed line so I get a more accurate reading on transmission temps, as well as this truck is due for band adjustments. So one band can be adjusted from the outside of the transmission. The other one has to be done from inside under the filter. So we're going to go ahead and do both the band adjustments when we do that. But those parts are going pretty slow. So I'm hoping they'll be here in the next like 2 weeks or so, if I'm lucky. They keep delaying the shipping on it. So we'll see where that ends up. But there is going to be some more work happening to the truck here. I really need to get a new steering box in this truck because it's getting pretty worn out. But we'll finish buttoning this thing back up right now, get it together, start it up, make sure it runs again, and go from there. I just realized I never posted the video. So the truck's been back together for almost a month now, and no real issues. I'm still waiting on transmission parts to get here, and really still need to put a steering box in it, but truck's got great oil pressure, fires up, runs good, nice and quiet, no engine noises. Everything's looking good on it, so at this point I'm pretty happy. But I think that, let's go ahead and get that video for you guys so you can see. I feel bad about that. That's my bad, guys. I just realized that I had it sitting there and never actually uploaded it for you. But yeah, we're pretty much a month in and it's still running great, so I'm happy.